where silence is learned before strength is born. Arina learned early that the earth could remember you. In her village, the ground was red with iron-rich soil, stubborn and generous at the same time. It stained feet and hems and dreams. Even when the rain came hard, even when drought cracked it open like old scars, the earth endured. Her grandmother used to say, "The land listens. Speak kindly when you walk it." Arina spoke to it every morning as she fetched water from the well. She was small for her age, all sharp eyes and quiet movements, with a mind that never seemed to rest. Numbers danced for her before she had words for them. Patterns revealed themselves in the way baskets were woven, in how shadows shifted as the sun climbed. But the village did not celebrate clever girls. Girls were meant to be careful, obedient, grateful. Dreams were indulgences. Questions were inconveniences. Silence was safety. Arina's mother, Lela, loved her fiercely but fearfully. She had learned what happened to women who reached too far. Her own life was a map of concessions: marriage too young, talents folded away like unused cloth, opinions swallowed before they could cause trouble. "Be brilliant quietly," Lela would whisper when Arina asked questions that made men frown. "Be small enough to survive." Arina tried. At night, by the dim glow of a kerosene lamp, she copied lessons from borrowed books, teaching herself mathematics beyond the village curriculum. She dismantled a broken radio once, laying its insides out like a puzzle, feeling something unlock inside her chest as she figured out how pieces fit together. Her father had died when she was 9, an accident, they said. A fall. But accidents were common here, especially among men who worked themselves hollow. His absence left a vacuum filled by rules and expectations she had never agreed to. When she earned a scholarship to a regional boarding school, the village celebrated in cautious tones. Pride mixed with suspicion. Education was good, but too much could spoil a girl. It was there, away from the familiar red earth, that Arina first learned how power hides itself. He was a teacher. Respected. Trusted. A man whose approval opened doors. He noticed her intelligence, praised her publicly, called her exceptional. He offered extra tutoring. Guidance. A future. Arina was 14. She wanted to learn. She wanted to be seen. The attention felt like sunlight at first, warm, validating. Then it shifted. Questions lingered too long. Compliments slid into comments that made her skin prickle. His hand rested where it shouldn't, just briefly, just enough to make her doubt herself. When she pulled away, he smiled like she was imagining things. "Don't be dramatic," he said gently. "You're special. I'm only trying to help." The village had taught her this language already. Gratitude. Silence. Endurance. She told no one. That was her first betrayal, not just by him, but by the world that had trained her to accept it. Where silence becomes a prison. The abuse did not happen all at once. It rarely does. It unfolded in fragments, moments that felt unreal even as they happened. His voice low, convincing. The room always locked. His authority heavy as a hand on her throat even when he wasn't touching her. Arina learned to leave her body. She learned how to fold fear into something manageable. How to dissociate, to float above herself and watch it happen like a story told about someone else. Afterward, she scrubbed her skin raw, as if shame could be washed away. She threw herself into her studies, desperate to outrun the thing that clung to her like smoke. When it finally ended, when she found the courage to refuse him outright, he turned cold. Grades slipped inexplicably. Opportunities vanished. Rumors bloomed like rot. She was labeled difficult. Unstable. Ungrateful. The scholarship was quietly withdrawn. The village welcomed her back with questions she could not answer. Lela saw the change in her daughter immediately, the way Arina flinched at touch, the way her eyes avoided mirrors. What happened? Her mother asked one night, voice trembling. Arina opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Because what language existed for this kind of theft? How do you explain that something essential has been taken without leaving a visible wound? The loss was layered. Her education. Her sense of safety. Her belief that effort alone could protect her. And then her grandmother died. The woman who had believed in her unconditionally, who had whispered stories of women warriors and queens when the world insisted on smallness, was gone. The grief hit Arina like a collapse. The earth she had trusted betrayed her too. She stopped dreaming. For a while, survival was all she managed. Where fear learns to wear ambition. The city arrived in her life like a dare. A distant cousin mentioned a training program coding, data analysis, technology. Future work, they said. City work. It paid a small stipend. Arina hesitated for exactly one night. At 21, she packed her few belongings and boarded a bus that smelled of fuel and sweat and possibility. As the village receded, she felt both relief and terror claw at her chest. The city was loud. It did not care if you were ready. Buildings pierced the sky like declarations. People moved fast, spoke faster. Arina felt invisible and exposed at the same time. Her accent marked her. Her clothes marked her. Her silence marked her. The training center was filled mostly with men. Confident. Loud. Certain they belonged. She doubted herself constantly. Impostor syndrome became a familiar companion, whispering that she had slipped in by accident, that sooner or later someone would notice she didn't belong. When instructors praised her work, she assumed it was pity. But something else stirred beneath the fear. Code made sense. Logic did not lie. Systems responded predictably when treated with precision. There was power in that. Safety. She stayed late, taught herself beyond the curriculum, rebuilt her confidence line by line. At night, the city hummed outside her window, and she whispered promises to herself she wasn't sure she believed yet. She took a job at a tech firm entry level, underpaid, grateful just to be inside the room. She learned quickly what it meant to be a woman there. Ideas ignored until repeated by men. Credit quietly redirected. Jokes that cut just enough to sting. Invitations that came with expectations. Once, in a meeting, a senior manager leaned close and said softly, "You're very talented. You could go far if you play your cards right." The words triggered something ancient in her body. A memory of locked doors. She smiled tightly and moved her chair back. "I plan to," she said, voice steady. "On my terms." That night, she threw up in the bathroom from the adrenaline crash. But she didn't quit. She was done being silent. Where resilience is forged, not gifted. The idea for her startup came from a problem she knew intimately. Access. She had watched brilliant women disappear from tech not because they lacked skill, but because systems were hostile, opaque, and unforgiving. She envisioned a platform that could democratize access to education, mentorship, and funding, especially for people from marginalized backgrounds. Everyone told her it was too ambitious. Investors smiled politely and declined. Advisors suggested she find a male co-founder for credibility. Colleagues warned her not to leave the security of a paycheck. She left anyway. The early days were brutal. She slept on a borrowed couch, coded through the night, survived on instant noodles and stubborn hope. When servers crashed, when money ran out, when self-doubt threatened to swallow her whole, she remembered the girl at the well, whispering to the earth. Endure. She faced sabotage she didn't expect. A former colleague leaked her prototype. An investor stole her pitch deck and funded a watered-down version of her idea under another founder's name. It felt like history repeating itself. Betrayal had a familiar taste. There were nights she curled on the floor, sobbing, the weight of everything she had survived pressing down on her lungs. She questioned whether resilience was just another word people used to excuse suffering. But something had changed in her. She no longer mistook pain for permission to quit. She rebuilt. Improved. Outworked them all. Slowly, traction came. Users. Testimonials. Press mentions. Her platform began to grow, not explosively at first, but steadily, stubbornly, like roots pushing through concrete. Resilience wasn't loud. It was relentless. Where old ghosts test new strength. Just as her startup reached a critical growth phase, he reappeared. The abuser. Now a consultant. A speaker on ethical leadership. His name surfaced on a list of potential partners a major client was considering. "I'm not accusing," she replied. "I'm stating a fact." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Each word landed with surgical precision. She named what he had done. How it had affected her. How his influence had protected him. His face shifted: anger, fear, calculation. "You'll ruin your career," he hissed. "No one will believe you." She smiled then, not with humor, but with certainty. "I already built my career," she said. "And I'm not asking anyone to believe me. I'm telling you what happens next." She slid a folder across the table. Documentation. Emails. Testimonies from others who had come forward once she spoke privately. A legal strategy. A media plan. "You don't get to follow me into the future," she said quietly. "This is where your access ends." For the first time, he looked small. When she walked out, the glass walls reflected her image back to her, steady, unbroken. She had reclaimed her voice. Where success is redefined. The fallout was seismic. The partnership dissolved. Investigations followed. Articles were published, not sensational, but precise. Truth had weight. Her startup surged. Not just because of the attention, but because people recognized integrity when they saw it. She became a sought-after voice on ethical tech, inclusion, and leadership. Awards followed. Influence. Authority. But she did not confuse visibility with fulfillment. She reinvested in her community. Built programs for girls from villages like hers. Returned to the red earth and stood barefoot, whispering gratitude. Power, she realized, was not domination. It was sovereignty. Where hope is allowed back in. Love arrived quietly. Not as a rescue. Not as a reward. He was thoughtful. Emotionally fluent. Patient. He did not flinch at her boundaries or try to rewrite her scars. He listened. Trust terrified her. Some nights, she pulled away, afraid of the vulnerability she had fought so hard to reclaim. He did not pressure her to be healed faster than she was. "You don't owe me certainty," he said once. "Just honesty." That felt revolutionary. The ending was not perfect. Healing never is. But it was real. Years later, standing on a stage, Arina looked out at a sea of faces: women, girls, dreamers. She spoke not of resilience as a burden, but as a force. "Resilience is not about enduring pain," she said. "It's about refusing to let pain define your limits." Somewhere beneath the city, the earth listened. And remembered her name.